Hey, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Tom Snyder. I own an agency that is now known as Trivera. But when it was founded back in 1996, we called ourselves Website Solutions. Back in 1996, that's all there was for digital marketing.
Oh yeah, hey, I started my first agency in '99. I think I did my first website in '98, and I remember it was very different. You got tables, you build it in. I think I built mine in Firefox, sliced it up through front page, and then put it out there.
Well, I remember in 1995 when I first saw the internet, a friend invited me over to her house, and she had one of those ivory little mini computers, on the big box monitor.
Did it have a green screen?
No, it was interesting because in 1995, websites had just migrated with Netscape Navigator.
Yeah.
And websites had just migrated from green screen text and entering this number to actually being able to click on things and put images in websites. It was also cool. Well, she says, I got to show you something. And so here she is on this monitor, and there's this picture of a piece of jewelry. She takes her mouse and she drags it from here to here, and it makes a noise. And she looks at me and she says, see? And I go, what is it that I just saw? Yeah. And she said, this local jeweler has just now put his jewelry for sale on a platform that anybody anywhere in the world can buy his stuff. A local jeweler in Milwaukee. And I'm like, that is cool.
It's pretty neat. Yeah. I do want to talk about, because you've been doing it for 30 years and you've gone through, many transitions, and kind of in the pre-show, you were kind of telling me a little bit about, you got to a point where you sold the agency or merged with another, and then that didn't work out. Can you tell us that story? Because there's a lot of agency owners that think the ultimate goal is to sell or be a part of a roll-up. So let's learn from your experience.
Well, there was, the entire environment back then that was at the crest of the dot-com boom. So I got in it and took my little one-man agency that started in the basement of my duplex in suburban Milwaukee, and within 3 years grew it to $1 million in revenue with a team of 10 at a pretty cool space on the other end of Menomonee Falls where we are now. And we caught the attention of an East Bay roll-up operation that had started with 10 agencies that were rolled up. And then they were acquiring other agencies as they moved eastward. And they said, we'd like to acquire you, make you a part of this roll-up. And the plan is to be bought by a bigger agency because, that's what was going on at the time. There were just all the mergers and acquisitions and growths and startups. And, there was just this irrational exuberance for this kind of activity. Mm-hmm. And we said, yeah, we're in. So we effectuated that. And it was as the ink was drying on the acquisition agreement, the dot-com crash happened. And just crazy things started happening. And there was a battle that was raging in between the organization, between, I guess, what we would call the agency owners that were planning to scale and sell, and the agency owners that were kind of in love with their own agency. And there were battles that were happening, and as the difficulties were beginning to emerge from the downturn in the economy and the digital economy, the entire operation kind of fell apart, and the original startup founder got kicked out. And we went to Las Vegas for a meeting where we were going to discuss the future of the entire roll-up operation. And I found out that I was no longer going to be in control of my agency. My wife, who was our CFO, was going to be let go, and she wasn't going to be a part of it. And my employees were actually going to be reporting to one of the other agency owners. And it was just something that, because I loved my agency, it was hard for me to watch what they were going to do to it.
Yeah.
Had I had the mindset of scaling, selling, and objectively viewing the situation, I would have said, "Yep, let's do it. We'll do what you want, and I'll let you guys drive this thing, and then work out the plan." But it was that meeting was on September 10th. And the next morning, where my wife and I are sitting in our hotel room watching TV and trying to figure out what we're going to do, and we start seeing planes crashing into the World Trade Center, and starting to wonder, what's really important, what's going to happen. And so we kind of made the decision at that point that we were just going to unmerge. We'd let those guys do their plan, and we were going to start over from ground zero. And that's what we did.
Well, I want to unpack kind of, why did you merge with them? Like, what was the ultimate goal? Like, walk me through that mindset. Where was it like, oh man, we're going to get a big check, this is better for my team? Did you feel that you couldn't take the agency further along, or what was that mindset?
Well, we were doing $1 million in revenue, and the offer was $1 million in stock. And because of the rate that all these things were happening, the assumption was that $1 million in stock would be worth $10 million in revenue within a year or two. When you've got someone waving that in front of your eyes, that's pretty attractive.
Yeah. Okay.
And, there were, as a bigger organization, they were able to offer better benefits, better salaries, and so it looked like it was going to be good for my team too. And, as just, that kind of an agency owner who has always regarded his team as his sacred trust, that it made everything seem really attractive.
Yeah. I remember, we got approached a number of different times, and eventually when we did sell, I felt that way as well. Right. I felt like I was the one holding the agency back. I was like, oh, this is better for my team. We'll be able to grow. They have more resources, all these different things. And then looking back years later, I'm like, oh man, that was, it shaped everything for me now. Like, looking back, like, I used to have regret, not because, we did well, but I look back, I'm like, man, we could have grown it so much bigger. But then I'm like, I wouldn't be in the situation now where I'm able to help so many people and tell them my story, what happened, and share other people's story with so many people, because we've been doing the podcast for 11 years now. So let's kind of talk about too, because this is unique. I haven't heard many people be able to unmerge. So how were you able to do that?
Well, the entire operation was in a kind of a state of chaos.
Okay.
Just because of the fact that there was this battle that was happening, and there were a couple of the agencies that were already threatening to unmerge because they weren't happy with the direction that it was going.
Mm-hmm.
They had no confidence that the plan was going to be able to work the way it did. And as part of the initial acquisition process, we discovered that there had been several of the other agency owners that were against them acquiring my agency, because we were a Midwest mom and pop operation. and they're like East Bay and Orange County and Seattle, Denver. And so they're like, what are we doing bringing these people aboard? They're not going to really be able to bring much to the party. And so when things started collapsing, some of the other agency owners kind of blamed us as being a part of it. And so they really felt that it would be in everybody's best interest for us to unmerge. And so they'd be unencumbered by this. And so they were actually happy that we, would entertain the thoughts of doing an unmerger. So it's, basically they got their shares back. They allowed us to keep a small number of shares. I don't know why.
Other shares weren't.
They did.
Well, let me ask you this: is that agency still around? Obviously, don't name the agency, but are they still around?
They actually ended up being acquired probably about 4 years ago now by a very large national brand. There are actually only 2 of the original agency owners were still there for this acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it ended up paying off for them, not as quickly as they hoped it would. But it did pay off.
And that's over 20 years of going through hell. Right. So I think you did the right thing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it was the first of many failures, and it kind of put us in a mindset where, we're jumping out of this. It was still a financially sound operation, but for us to be able to jump into starting a new agency from scratch, we weren't allowed to keep our original name because of the unmerger deal. So we had to pick a new name. And so that's when we became Trivera. We were just sitting around and brainstorming and saying, okay, well, we need a name, and, I don't want my name to be the name of the agency.
Yeah.
And so, we're thinking something that sounds Greek or Latin, and we're brainstorming and we're thinking Trivera, that's 3 truths or 3 stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it was our 3rd incarnation, it fit. And so many of the parts of our value proposition were able to be sold in triads. And so we, the most important thing, we went up to Network Solutions to see if Trivera.com was available.
And I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Well, and it was.
Yeah.
It had just become available. Whoever had owned it before had just let it lapse. And so, I don't know if we want to call it divine providence or coincidence or what, but so we grabbed it. And so we've been Trivera ever since.
You got to do something that not many people get to do, is hit the reset button.
Well, it was good because it's, the whole environment was completely different. With the .com crash, the agencies and the startups and all that were built on Flash and not the web development product, but just pomp and big promises, expensive Super Bowl ads. They were just failing. The ones that were succeeding were the ones that were relying on good business metrics, having a great team and a great culture and operating frugally, not overspending and, not burning through investment money. And so that really helped us lay the foundation to be able to have the business grow. And having gone through that calamity, there were so many others that came after that. The Great Recession and COVID and, several in the market, the client market that we served was in that tier where they were the ones who were being acquired. And so we'd land a really big client and it would be a great relationship and we knew that it would last forever and then they'd get bought. And then the new agency that bought them, they're like, well, it's okay. We're going to be able to bring you in and have you be the agency for this bigger operation. And it never turned out that way, and so, we lost the incumbency and lost the business and had to start back over and replace that revenue.
Yeah, we went through a lot of that. And what we found is you just have to build the pipeline. Like, you're never going to keep all of your clients forever. Right. And I tell a lot of our mastermind members this now because it happens to them all the time, especially if you're starting to build some startup companies. Take a little shares, like reduce your rate a little bit for ownership, especially if this keeps happening to you, because there's obviously a reason. If they're growing on your back and you're growing them and then they sell, well, if you have some shares in there, I always talk about the story of, someone came to me and they, obviously you don't want to do all trade. But I remember I had this one company come to me. They were like, I have this great idea. It's around Christmas and all this kind of stuff. They were like, and it's, people are gonna, it's this elf thing. And I'm like, oh, this is the dumbest idea. It'll never work. And they wanted to give us 10% of elf on the shelf. And I didn't do it. And I hid that little fucking elf for years and years, which always haunted me, which I always laughed about. But like I tell people, like, take a little part of their shares, right? And then the other part too, I found this with a lot of our mastermind members too, is the CMOs usually are replaced and they go somewhere else, but then they bring you in, which is kind of nice. It takes a little bit, but it's a little silver lining.
Yeah, and then that's what we've discovered over the past few years. There was an epiphany that we had that totally changed our business. Came not until about 5 or 6 years ago, when for all these years we were project based. The plan was sell a website, build a website, launch a website, try to convince the clients to do some more ongoing digital stuff. But in the market segment that we were in, that was a hard sell. And so then it was, okay, now we repeat the cycle. Go out and sell another, launch, sell, launch, sell, launch.
Yep.
Someone said, how come you're not doing retained service agreements, annual agreements that may or may not include a website design? And it's like, over the years, the one thing that was a constant factor for us was that it seemed like every time there was a downturn that we needed to recover from, there was a new emerging technology that provided us the opportunity to be able to expand what we offer and give us a new revenue source. And so, after the .com crash, we embraced SEO and started doing email marketing and started really building up expertise in those areas, and then mobile and social media. There was, back in 2009 during the Great Recession, we were sitting around, my wife and I were drinking cappuccinos and wondering how we were going to make our next payroll, because we had lost some clients and the economy had downturned. And we're like, everybody's asking us about social media. They're saying, should we be on Twitter? Should we be on Facebook? Should we be on MySpace and Foursquare and all this? And, we said, you know what? We can become the experts on this. Let's plan an event. let's plan on an all-day, so we'll call it Social Media University, and we'll sell tickets, and our clients are going to come, and the other agencies in town that are trying to figure out what's going on with social media, they'll come, and everybody else will come. And that was Memorial Day weekend. And by July, the middle of July, when the event had happened, we sold 400 seats to this event. And our team did a lot of the sessions. And then there were some of our clients actually were able to be some of the seminar and breakout session owners. And between the sponsorships and the ticket sales that we did, we made enough money to be able to keep making our payroll. And then coming out of that, we ended up getting hired by several companies that had us manage their social media.
I love that. And do you still do the event?
We did one in 2014. It was the 5-year class reunion. And it wasn't as well attended. But it further solidified our position in the marketplace.
Yeah.
It was funny. The story that we tell was that, a social media university. And so, we presented a syllabus, and at the end of the day, we handed out diplomas. And a couple of years after that, someone applied for a position with us, and they listed on their resume the diploma from Social Media University. And I don't know if they did that just to impress us, that they thought it was serious enough, or they didn't know that we were the ones that did the event. But
yeah, I would, man. Why didn't you continue that every year?
The first one in 2009 did really well. The 2014 one just did a little bit better than breaking even. And, there were just, back in 2009, it's like the web back in 1996. We were one of 3 agencies in the Midwest that was doing website development.
Yeah.
And so there were so many other agencies now that were doing social media. 2009, our event actually launched a couple of some huge competitors that went on to become very big, including one that by the time 2014 came along, they were being bought by a very, very large multinational company.
Yeah.
And so that was part of the frustration that I had. It's like 30 years in this thing, and we start some other companies that, start after we got started, and they're able to execute on that plan to scale and sell. And, what's wrong with us?
Well, I think everyone goes to, has that comparing yourself to everyone else or their story, but you never know what the details are in the deal. I always look at, especially these days, like I don't watch the news anymore because it makes me depressed. I try to limit my social media as much as I can, because I'm like, I get into that. I'd be like, oh, like, why are they so big? Like, we've been doing this 11 years. Like, but then I'm like, then I start thinking, and I start talking to other people. I'm like, oh, like, it's not as good as they say. Right. And so I look at it as, if you're like, I just chatted with someone on last week's episode. She's like, I'll never sell. I don't want to. And, she has around 43 people. And I remember her telling the story a little bit of where she went to see this one nonprofit in, I can't remember, some country overseas, and they started helping them out. And they were like, man, I was like, I'd never realized how much my dollar actually goes to places like this. And then that motivated her to grow her team. And then, like, making the team better and better motivated her. And now they're, multi-million-dollar agency growing. She's like, I'm never sell. My goal is to constantly get bigger and bigger so I can help more and more people out. Versus some people, when I first started the first agency, my goal, because I started in the .com era, I was like, oh man, these people are making millions and millions. I'm like, I'm going to sell this thing in like a year and a half. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like it's going to be, and then we started developing a CMS system, an email marketing system, e-commerce system. I'm like, right. Like, and then we couldn't put our efforts and time into that. I put all my eggs into the agency. And then you look back, you're like, oh man, like, and I had a buddy sell Pardot for $100 million in cash. I'm like, oh, right. Like you're just like, holy cow. So, it's, I look back now, I'm like, look, it's provided me an amazing life. We've been able to touch so many people. I'm like, will I have money like Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos? No, don't really care. I don't want that pressure. So.
Yeah. No, that's the same thing. We had, back in those days, it was before WordPress, before CMS, before MailChimp, before Pardot.
Yep.
And we were building all this stuff ourselves. We had Trivera Cart, which is our e-commerce system, and Trivera CMS, and Trivera Mail. Mm-hmm. And, as these other things started emerging, we're like, well, how do we keep up with the functionality of MailChimp when they're offering it for free?
What I realized is I needed to dedicate specific teams and leaders for those divisions that we created. That was my mistake as the CEO, to miss those points. Because I think, looking back, our CMS was drag and drop in 2001, which was pretty cool. And it was really easy, but it wasn't SaaS. Like we had to deploy it on every server. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's because I was the leader of all these different divisions. And so that's the lesson I always tell everybody is like, if you're using your agency as an incubator agency to build other amazing technologies, which a lot of agencies are starting to do, like everyone's building an AI tool right now. It kind of reminds me of the .bomb era, right? .com, get a lot of investment. .ai, get a lot of investment now. And there's just too many tools out there. Not saying AI is going anywhere. The .com didn't go anywhere either, right? For the web, but you got to get really focused. But Tom, I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And congratulations on all your success over the past 30 years and all the things that you've learned and given back to your team and all the clients. And for everyone listening, if make sure you subscribe and like this. And if you want to go to a really amazing event where it's just the coolest agency owners, really curated, we're having an event in Phoenix in April. We'd love all of you to come check it out. It's called Elevate My Agency. So go to elevatemyagency.com, check that out. And until next time, have a swank day. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you want more content like this, make sure you click on the link on the screen or check out your most popular podcast platform where the full episode is there. And until next time, have a swank day. What are you doing? Go check it out. Click on the link. I'll see you soon.